so I think we can talk about it.
Yeah.
I think we can riff on the fact that it says it's an obscure film from 1999 called The Matrix. Maybe you've heard of it.
Yes, we said how obscure it is. It's like, obscure.
Really? To whom? Not to us. Welcome to I Like Batteries, the show where we explore the world of batteries. I'm Jeff Lynch.
And I'm Mike Muldoon. Good evening, Jeff Lynch. It's another. We're going for another evening. We're back to the morning, back to the evening. It's okay, though.
We do what we can do.
It was a sunny day today, though, which was nice.
It was lovely here in New England, yes. It was in the mid-50s up here in Harpswell.
We do need some rain, though.
Do you?
Well, down by me, it's unfortunate. Driving down to work, there's been a fair bit of brush fires.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's one in Georgetown, Massachusetts, going right across the highway. I mean, it didn't go across the highway, but the smoke was. So a little rain would be good. Right. But, the good thing is, since you and I do use a lot of battery-powered equipment, the good part is the lack of gas that could potentially cause a fire is good. And
it's hard to spill a battery.
We talked about this and
yes.
in our previous episode, and I think we both were very thrown by the amount of gas that was actually spilled.
Yeah, I forget the exact number, but it was astronomical.
Yeah, but I get it, because if I've spilled gas, you've spilled gas, and so have a lot of other people. But the good part, as we said about batteries, you don't spill them. The bad part is sometimes they don't power the things that you need them to power, as in the inverter on the power station isn't big enough. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, this is a follow-up from the very tail end of episode 217, where Mike and I were talking about our WORX leaf shredders, and Mike was curious as to whether my EcoFlow River would power the WORX leaf shredder. And the quick answer is no, it doesn't. But we do have some math to back this up. So the EcoFlow River that I have is a 600-watt power station, but it has this thing they call X-Boost, which gets you up to, I believe, 1,600 watts in my version. The current River Pro, I think, gets you 1,800 under X-Boost. But that's a temporary boost. It is not a sustained boost. Mm-hmm. So some battery math, and really not battery math, it's just really like electricity math. So the WORX leaf shredder is a 120 volt system. It draws 13 amps. So if you multiply volts times amps, you get watts. And 120 volts times 13 is 1,560 watts, which, although is under the limit of the X-Boost maximum, it draws this on a sustained basis. So therefore, the River says, no thank you, and shuts off.
Yeah. Good safety, though, that it does do that.
We like that. Yes. Yeah. We don't need batteries overheating.
No. And I mean, I kind of had that feeling, right? Because it is spinning, and both of ours, since we both have the same apparatus, at quite a rate. And so it is something that needs a lot of quote unquote juice to be able to run it. And you usually have it running for a bit. At least I did when we were doing leaves. I mean, you're kind of continuously putting leaves in there until the bag gets filled. But you have your different little setup. But
yes, I barrel, have a custom thing over a plastic garbage barrel. But pro tip for those of you, if you happen to own a WORX leaf shredder, the pro tip recommendation is to remove the small cutter blade that is embedded inside of the bin of the WORX leaf shredder, because that is really good at catching debris and blocking the flow of the shredded leaves. And if you remove that, that happens way less. So And Mike, you experienced this recently, right? You did not take your cutter out, and you
Nope.
experienced the backup that I
experienced the backup, and my son and I were replacing the little, what do you call it, wire? It's really not wire; it's plastic. But and looked and was like, well, "What is that?" And cleared enough of it away to actually see what it is. So yes, it catches quite a bit of that, but unfortunately, it can't be battery powered. But I did say, Jeff, I did use my Ryobi lawnmower to shred up some leaves, and then use the leaf blower to do that, and then use the leaf vac to then suck that all, which are all Ryobi's 40-volt series, because obviously you need a little bit more voltage in this case to be able to do that. But Ryobi does not have a 120-volt battery yet. I think their largest, actually, they do have an 80-volt, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they do, for their new ride-on lawnmowers.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, the Ego stuff that I have is 56 volts. So, but what your Delta run the WORX?
The Delta Max would do that, but then yet again, it's a bigger apparatus. So then I have to take that out of the shed, bring it out front, let it sit there, and part of the problem is I wouldn't be able to run it that long, because if it's running 1,560 watts. That maybe only get me an hour. Now, granted, you're turning it on and off, but I don't think I don't have quite enough solar to be recharging that effectively. But the solar has been great. The shed has been really good, and I've actually gone and turned the Wave 2 on in the morning just for about 10-15 minutes, just to warm the shed up a little bit, so that all the batteries can charge, because it has gotten cold, below freezing. And so the shed's insulated well enough that the batteries aren't getting to freezing, but they're kind of happier at about 40 or above. So I'll usually just raise the temp in there to 40, and then once they start charging, obviously as the batteries are charging, the inverter's kind of throwing a little bit of heat, and then get some nice solar gain of the sun going through the window, so everything's fine in the world. But Jeff, do you ever think about yourself and whether all that raking or everything you could do could actually generate some power?
I do, but before we get to that, I do have a follow-up on the SnowJoe.
Oh, you told me this. Yeah. This isn't good. I feel like this is not a good follow-up. I mean, it's going to be a good follow-up, but I feel like it's not
a happy ending. No.
Right. So tell me about this, and tell our listeners who don't know about your SnowJoe.
Yeah. So, gosh, and this goes way back. So I bought, I think it was just under $1,000, a 2-stage self-propelled SnowJoe snow thrower, which came with 4 12-amp-hour batteries that ran it and 2 dual chargers. So this was a good setup, and it worked a couple times. And I bought it at the end of 2022. Mm-hmm. So we'd have to go back, and I'm sure we mentioned it on the show.
Well, we did a whole episode on snowblowers.
We did, and probably more than one. So, but then in early 23, the battery stopped working. And maybe it was later in 23. Regardless, I contacted the support people, and the support people were like, okay, we can put you on the waiting list for when we have replacement 12-amp-hour batteries, and we'll send you, because 2 of them were no longer charging. And I think the follow-up beyond that was one of those batteries started making hissing noises, and so I put it outside very quickly.
Yeah.
So they said, okay, we'll put you on the waiting list. And that was like in January of this year. So it must have been, it wasn't quite immediately that it failed. But anyway, so the beginning of 2024, I had contacted support, and they're like, yeah, we can put you on this list. The other option was to get a full refund for the snowblower. But I'm like, I kind of like the snowblower. And how long can it take them to get these batteries taken care of?
Oh, boy.
So I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. And in May, I contacted them again. They're like, yep, sorry, still no stock of them. So I contacted them again last week. and over chat. And then that wasn't really bearing fruit. So I actually called. So I spoke to a human and explained my situation again. And they're like, oh, they're in stock. And I'm like, oh, like, why didn't I get an email? And they said, oh, they closed the support ticket, so that took you off the waiting list. And I didn't close the support ticket. They did. So here I am waiting for these batteries to be notified that they're in stock. Anyway, so they're in stock. And I also was complaining because it took them so long. I'm like, hey, it's been like almost a year. And we're getting to the point where I'm going to need my snowblower again. And I can't use this thing that I, paid all this money for. Long story short, so they said, you need to send us a video of the batteries in the charger not charging. And they will then send me, theoretically, 2 new batteries. Okay. I was trying to lobby for having all 4 replaced because I'm like, come on now. Like, it's been a year.
Right.
And you messed up. So please help me. They are unable to do that. So I'm not so keen on SnowJoe at the moment. But if I get these 2 new batteries, maybe I'll just try to sell this snow blower in a working state with 2 new batteries and pick up a Ego snow thrower instead, because I already have other Ego equipment that I could use those new batteries with.
I would say you can use your Ego batteries with that.
With a new, like if the Ego snow blowers that I was looking at come with pairs of 7.5 amp hour batteries, which would be compatible with all the other Ego stuff I have. And so I think that's probably the way I'm going to go.
Was the support person named Joe?
They were not.
Okay. SnowJoe. I just wasn't sure.
It was a woman. I forget her name. I apologize.
Wasn't Joe.
Right. She was pleasant enough.
Yeah, I'm sure she was.
And I was just expressing my discontent with the way things had gone and the timing and all that. But anyway,
well, I do think that's one of the things though is I would say once you kind of get in a brand, and obviously was in mine, right? Mm-hmm. It's like I have multiple 40-volt batteries that I use, which is actually really helpful because then swapping them between the lawnmower to the blower to I've got a chainsaw, like all these things, it makes it definitely easier. So I think that I think if I memory serves, it was just a really good deal on that particular.
It was more than 50% off.
Yeah, it was some really good deal, and that's why you kind of wanted that. Oh, that's unfortunate, but otherwise you have to shovel the snow, which would mean then maybe you could generate energy.
Which is what I had to do when those batteries. And I think I may even told you I went and bought some third-party batteries. I couldn't find any 12 amp hour ones. I could only find 8s or something, and I bought those, and those failed too. So I'm not happy with the whole SnowJoe or SnowJoe compatible stuff. I'm just down on it right now. So
I'm sorry.
Sorry if you're a SnowJoe fan.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. I mean, it happens even we're Apple fans, but it's happened with Apple products too.
Of course,
I mean, for sure.
Yes,
those things happen. But so one of the things we're, I guess I would say, alluding to was something that I found, and I thought this was kind of interesting because some of you know I've been generating my own electricity this year and kind of have this cool thing. Well, on Hackster.io, found something. This gentleman by the name of Nick Zeta made a suit, a Matrix human battery concept with heat harvesting bodysuit that he had. What do you think about this, Jeff? From the obscure movie, from what they say in this article, The Matrix, which I don't think is obscure. I thought it was a very popular mainstream movie. Granted, it was a long time ago, but still.
Well, maybe we're just of the appropriate age where it wasn't obscure for our generation.
I guess so. 1999. I would say that, but hence he made this suit, kind of Arduino-esque, that captures the heat from his body as he moves and converts it to basically a thermoelectric generator and creates energy. Yeah,
it's fun. Right, it makes for good YouTube videos.
It makes for great YouTube videos. And I mean, if you think about it, it's also one of these parts where BioLite, clearly I actually have a thermoelectric generator that I use, and it's awesome. I mean, I love collecting my sticks, putting it in there, and heating up some water, having some tea with it, and charging my batteries. I think that thermoelectric generators are pretty awesome. But he did a good little job of, like I said, getting a little Arduino with a thermoelectric generator and then utilizing it to be able to create a little bit of voltage and, in essence, create some electricity. It was not a lot, nor do I think you could really Matrix-esque that many people into doing so. I think you would get more out of actually doing what I'm doing, which is biking right now, spinning the generator, and maybe I would get a little extra heat. Our good friend Jim Gregory talked about that from Pedal PC, about how he warmed the room just by him generating heat off of his body, which I think is more effective than using a thermoelectric generator strapped to your body to
and it looks like a bunch of little sensors, right? A bunch of little I don't know how many there are, maybe 20 or 30.
Too, how they said he used some we talked about exercising, which feels fine, but he had a couple different strategies to get his temp as high as possible exercising. He drank alcohol as well, which for those of us that have had a beverage or two, you might get a little warmer after you do that.
Sure.
And use capsaicin, ingested and topical. But he didn't have enough power. Like I as a medical professional, I would not suggest doing all of those together. It's just
the exercising would be like sort of the one and only recommendation, right?
Sure. I mean, exercising with alcohol just can lead to bad things. But
that would be bad.
It was just one of those ones. So I guess if you were shoveling enough snow and had enough heat generated from that, then maybe you could do something like that as well. But I don't know with that. But Jeff, I am going to say, did you know that there's some pretty cool sand batteries out there that you could maybe use to be able to generate some heat and electricity?
We have talked about these before, but we did come across a new article.
It's a pretty powerful sand battery.
It is, yes, a sand battery in Finland, generating 100 megawatts. And these are, what do we say? They're more thermal storage systems, right? So they're not generating. You're not going to be charging your phone off of this, but you could certainly be heating large spaces with them.
Absolutely, and that's in fact what they're doing. It's called Polar Night Energy, and the sand battery is filled with a good amount. 2,000 tons of soapstone, which is pretty cool because people have known, soapstone fireplaces and whatnot that you have. They do great, essentially put your wood in there, get it going. And then even once it's essentially extinguished or stopped, that soapstone is still radiating a ton of heat out. And so what they did with this is they took these soapstone fireplaces or kind of the soapstone itself, and they received 40 truckloads of crushed soapstone for the purpose to make that giant sand battery. They said in theory it's capable of generating 1 megawatt of power and storing 100 megawatts of energy. I mean, that's a lot of energy.
That is a lot of energy.
Yeah. And 13 meters...
Well, it only gives us 2 dimensions.
It's 15 meters. I'm sorry,
wide.
13 meters high and 15 meters wide.
But it doesn't say how long. It's like we have no idea.
Is it circular? Yeah, it looks circular from the picture. That's purely what I'm going on. But
okay, so we've got a 45-foot diameter and a roughly 40-foot tall cylinder.
Yeah. And I did not realize that soapstone is primarily mined up in Finland as well. Were you aware of this?
I was not aware of that. I'm also curious, should we call this a 13150? No, a 15130.
No, because it's by
But
millimeters.
it's meters,
so that,
right?
yeah,
So it'd be really big.
I don't even know what that number would be. Yeah. It'd be big. Yeah. I mean, it'd be big. Yeah. I mean, I think this is pretty neat though, because we've talked about sand batteries, right? In terms of how people have been able to do this, but clearly, essentially, if you pulverize it, you're getting soapstone to that same type of thing. And I do like that whole entire plant will operate entirely on electricity, eliminating the need for fuel transportation and contributing to cleaner energy future. So that is what they're trying to do.
Well, we've talked previously, right, about sort of keeping your energy local in a sense.
Right.
Generating it locally, storing it locally, using it locally. And I think I'm psyched about the future of this sort of thing.
Well, and essentially they're recycling the soapstone, right? So it's like, I'm making an assumption here that like, okay, somebody's building a new house here and, I'm going to get rid of that soapstone fireplace. And they said, oh, well, we'll take that off your hands and then essentially pulverize into it. So kind of great ecological type of thing that's there. So this is definitely something cool. I mean, soapstone fireplaces that then end up being something that you can be able to get going as well. But one of the things, obviously, sand batteries are good. But Jeff, I get a little bit worried. Unfortunately, it's sand, and there's a lot of salt water often at the beach with sand, but we came across a little something that I did not even think about with all of the hurricanes that had come up kind of the East Coast and whatnot, which is saltwater and batteries. It's not a good combination.
No, certainly not. And we're not sandbagging that at all. And a lot of the times the cars are sitting submerged. And I think that's the critical piece here. That
it is. Yeah. And I don't know if we've ever talked about this on the show. I mean, obviously we talked about water and batteries, and clearly not good. But the article that we came across here is the fact that so many cars that were EVs in flooded areas that then the battery is sitting there. Essentially, these batteries are sealed, right? So they do have, what's it, IP66 and IP67, I think, in terms of how they're said the rating for what they're sealed. But that type of seal is good for a certain amount of time. And
it's a really short amount of time.
Yeah, that's the problem. And after 30 minutes, it does not hold. And therefore, regular water, if you're driving through a puddle or if you even was sitting in a puddle, it's not conductive. However, salt water is, and that is part of the problem here, that when that salt water gets into the battery, that's when battery fires happen. And unfortunately, that is exactly what happened in this number of cases from this article. So, folks, if you're living in an area, I mean, honestly, Hampton just had a pretty big king tide recently. We had the flooding that came in from that. It seems to happen every time we've got a really big moon. So if you have an EV, get that EV out of that area because there can be a problem. In fact, this article said that there were several, not only EVs, but scooters and whatnot too that had gotten submerged too. So you don't think about that. So just don't even think about not only your car, but if you have a e-bike or if you have something else like that, that needs to get out of there because bad things happen. And the video that comes with this is not very good, but they had, I think, 30 some odd cars. 11 electric cars and 48 lithium-ion batteries that caught fire after exposure to salt water. And unfortunately, some of these fires then spread to the home itself that it was in. So it's like complete insult to injury on these poor people who had this flooding, and then it's flooded and your house catches on fire. I mean,
and it's often delayed as well. So technically what's happening there is, again, the salt water is a little bit conductive, and what happens is the battery effectively short circuits and then begins the process of thermal runaway, and that's where the fires start. But it's also often days later that this happens, right? It doesn't happen instantly. It's not like lighting a match. It's a a process that can take quite a while as the seals on these batteries, succumb to the pressure of sitting submerged in water for days and days on end. So
yeah,
be careful.
Well, and I think one of the important tips that they put in here too is if you had even your electric lawnmower, your cordless power tools and things like that. So I think all my area is store them up higher, right?
Yes.
So it's just probably something you're not thinking of. There's something coming in. You have all this type of thing. Even if you got an EcoFlow power station, anything like just if that's coming, store them up high, right? So sometimes it's 2-3 feet of water that comes in for these type of things. So if you're putting it up on a shelf that's 5-6 feet above, hopefully it's not going to get that bad. Even if there's rain coming in, it's not the rain, honestly. It's the salt water coming in that has the greatest effect on that. So that's definitely something that's a good safety tip for sure. But the other thing that's a good safety tip is you should recycle those batteries if maybe you're questionable of what might have happened to them, just to be able to get that out of there. And, Jeff, do you think AI could help with recycling?
I think some people would like to believe that it can.
Why this article
help with everything, right?
Well,
AI is our solution for it.
I think that's that's just like just throw out the word AI. But in this case, the AI is kind of coming out because we've talked about recycling batteries.
It's actually good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, AAAs, AA's, all these other type of things. And Tom's been on the show, Tom Bishop from Pillblue, about how to recycle your single-use batteries. But sometimes the problem is if you can't scan a barcode to be able to know what type of battery, what else could you do? And in this case, this is where a company that uses AI to be able to identify them actually, I think, has a good idea.
Yeah. So basically, they've trained their AI model to recognize batteries and sort them according to the type of battery they are. So if it's a single-use battery, or if it's a nickel metal hydride battery, or a lithium-ion battery. And the reason for this, and the reason why this is actually a good thing, this article came out of the UK, or a study in the UK, where in 2023 alone there were 1,200 fires in waste management facilities from missorting of batteries.
Yeah, and we talked about this of how and we'll bring this tip up again. If you do have a lithium battery that you're recycling, tape them. Put some tape over the anode and the cathode, the plus and the minus. Because if they contact with each other, there's still a small amount in there, and they will spark. They will potentially cause a fire. So, I mean, if you use this AI to identify it, you'd be like, hey, tape that one versus that. The reality is here, if you're not sure, just tape every battery. It's probably fine. Mm-hmm. There's no harm that's going to come to taping an alkaline one either.
No, of course not.
For sure. Type of thing. So, I think it's just important. We didn't know we were going to have the safety session here, but I think some of these things are important. Hopefully there's not a lot of hurricanes out there. Hopefully there's not a lot of flooding. We hope these things aren't going to happen. But if they are, you want to be able to learn from them, stay safe, keep your quote unquote lights on. If you do have a battery that you're trying to use to keep your lights on, to keep power things, obviously, in certain times, but keep it up off the ground so it's not going to get any salt water in there. And if you are recycling batteries, tape them to be able to make sure they're safe for everybody else.
Great tips.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully with that, you stayed fully charged, but not too charged, because we don't want to have any type of battery fires. So maybe just keep it at 80%, Jeff.
And dry.
And dry. And with that, folks, hopefully you have a good week. Hopefully you stay dry, and hopefully you keep your batteries fully charged by exercising. That's what I would say.
Okay, let's go with that.
All right, sounds good. Take care, folks. Have a good week.